Depending on where you live in the country, rental rates for a Cessna 152 may be in the range of $115, while a 172 may run to $150. A Cirrus may be $75 if you join a club. All of this makes one wonder, would it be cheaper to own my own plane rather than rent? Well, I currently own a Vans RV-12. This is the fifth plane I've owned. In this video, I will share my experience with this airplane after 9 months of ownership. It's not quite a year yet, but it can reveal some of the expenses ownership entails. Although I'm specifically talking about an RV-12, most of the items I describe apply to other types of planes as well. Just fill in the blanks with your own values as appropriate. I also know that depending on the region of the country you live in, some of the rates I pay will differ from what you'll pay. Some will be higher, some will be lower. Again, you just fill in the blanks. So now let's do a deep dive into my own costs. I lay them out for everyone to see. I'm going to divide expenses into different categories. The first we'll discuss is what I'll call a variable expense. This is an expense of operation. Basically, what does it cost me for each hour I fly the plane? The principal expense here is the cost of fuel. Because my plane has a Rotax engine that can run on either 100 low-lead avgas or 93 octane automotive gas, this cost can vary between $3 to $5 a gallon in June of 2023. Because MoGas is not available at most airports, I run on the more expensive 100 low-lead. So in this chart, I have filled in the number of hours I flew each month and the associated fuel cost. It's clear here why I call this a variable cost. The expenditures in months when I flew a lot were more than in the months when I flew only a little. Fly more, pay more. Fly less, pay less. Here, I've highlighted the number you want to shoot for, your average hourly cost. Compare this number to what you'd pay to rent the equivalent plane. In my case, if this was all I had to consider, I'd pay $17 an hour to fly my plane. But now, back to the real world. Variable costs are not the only costs there are. In fact, most of the expenses you'll incur fall into the area of fixed costs. Fixed costs are expenses you pay no matter how much or how little you fly. For example, your plane is an investment you want to protect with insurance. The amount you'll pay depends on the value of the plane and your own personal flight experience and ratings, and perhaps the airport you're based at, along with other factors. In my case, the premium came to $2,874 a year. In this chart, I have spread that amount evenly over the 12-month period. You can see here the impact that had on my average hourly cost. Still, that hourly amount looks pretty good compared to a rental rate I might pay. To give you an idea of the impact fixed expenses can have, though, look at my experience in December. I flew less than an hour that month. The fixed cost jacked up my hourly rate to $300 for that month alone. So here's a lesson number one. If you're not going to fly a lot, renting might be cheaper in the long run. If I lived in a fly-in community where I could keep my plane in my garage, that might just be, aside from an occasional other thing, most of the expense I'd incur. Heck, at $65 an hour, it'd be a no-brainer. I'd run by a plane and keep it at home. But I can't keep it at home, so I need to allow for storage. At my airport, tie-down fees are $85 a month. Since I bought my plane at the end of September, those fees would start in October, and they add up to the overall average hourly expense, shown here. But look, I don't want to keep my plane outside exposed to the elements. I want to protect the paint from UV rays and the electronics from the summer heat, so I opted to keep it in a hangar at $400 a month. Whoa, look at what that did to my original $17 an hour cost of operation. That's the price you'd pay, though, if you want to own. At this point, weigh the positives. I don't have to reserve my plane. If I wake up and it's a nice day, I can hop in the plane and fly to the beach. I can visit family in distant cities for the weekend. I can experience the fun of flying that most people don't know. So that $137 an hour approaches what I'd probably pay to rent the plane I own. So maybe I decide I'm in the ballpark of being equivalent to renting anyway, so owning becomes a feasible choice. There are some other expenses to consider, though. Your airplane will require maintenance. These are some of the types to consider. What if something breaks? What if they issue an airworthiness directive that has to be addressed in order to remain airworthy? Believe me, it happens. These are examples of unscheduled maintenance. But there's also maintenance done on a schedule. My RV-12 requires an oil change after 25 hours of running 100 low lead, and new spark plugs every 100 hours. Once a year, the plane has to pass an annual or a condition inspection. The ELT and the transponder require recertification. Some of this maintenance you can do yourself. I choose to let an A&P mechanic do all of mine, so I pay more than you might. There are some other expenses you might incur depending on where you live. Some localities might tax your plane, so you might need to set aside some funds for that. So, wrapping up my own expense reporting, and not to belabor the point, I've highlighted 2 months in which I flew more than in other months. The moral of this story is that owning a plane can be rewarding and make financial sense if you're able to fly a lot. The ratio between your flight hours and your fixed costs will determine your hourly rate, which you want to keep low. In essence, fly more, pay less. One strategy you might consider is to enter into a partnership with one or more other pilots. This allows you to split the fixed costs equally, which can dramatically lower your cost per hour to own. You do the math. So to own a plane, you have to buy one first. For an airplane like mine, you'd search the popular websites like Trade-A-Plane, Barnstormers, or The Controller. You might find a home-built RV-12 for $65,000. You could build one yourself from a kit. You can order a factory-built one from Vans. There are some costs associated with your airplane search. Especially if you buy an owner-built RV, you'd want to have a pre-sale inspection done for you. That'll cost several $1,000s, but will be smart money spent. Depending on who and where you buy from, there might be a ferry expense to consider. Some time ago, a viewer asked me to do a video outlining my own personal story of how I bought my plane, and I'll be doing that video soon. Until then, I hope this has given some food for thought, and I hope I haven't discouraged anyone from buying if they have a passion. I have never regretted any one of the 5 planes I have owned, and they all suited me at the time I owned them. If your ownership experience is different than mine, please drop a comment so others can benefit from your personal experience too. Till next time, stay tuned to this channel and subscribe if you haven't yet to get notified when the next episode gets pushed.